Deep within the Thar Desert sits a perfectly preserved, sprawling settlement of over 400 stone homes. For 200 years, this entire village has remained completely empty. Modern investigators claim the site is alive with anomalies, recording sudden temperature drops and erratic electromagnetic spikes. Most famously, visitors have reported the small, dusty handprints of children appearing on their cars in a village where no child has lived for centuries. These reports have cemented Kuldhara's reputation as India's most haunted village, a status rooted in a local legend of a mass disappearance. The story claims that in July of 1825, 80,000 Paliwal Brahmins vanished from these streets in a single night, leaving no trace of where they went. The myth centers on Diwan Salim Singh, a ruler who governed from this sandstone fortress. He allegedly used his power to extort the village through ruinous taxes and issued a demand for the village chief's daughter, giving the residents only 24 hours to comply. According to the legend, the villagers chose to abandon their homes and their ancestral lands rather than submit. As they left, they supposedly placed a curse on Kuldhara, ensuring that anyone who attempted to settle here would meet a tragic end. The idea of 80,000 people evaporating overnight contradicts the basic reality of human migration. To find the truth, we have to look past the supernatural framing and examine the environmental collapse of the village and why the ghost stories are still being told today. In 2017, the journal Current Science published a study suggesting that a massive earthquake was responsible for the village's destruction, providing a naturalistic explanation for the collapsed roofs and broken pillars. But historical and geological records show no major seismic activity in this region during the 1825 migration period. More importantly, Kuldhara's stone walls remain perfectly aligned today. A catastrophic earthquake would have left visible gaps and structural shifts that simply aren't there. To understand why the village was actually abandoned, we have to look at the engineering that allowed the Paliwal Brahmins to thrive in one of the world's most hostile environments in the first place. They developed the Khadin system, a sophisticated method of water harvesting. They used the natural slopes of the desert hills to funnel rainfall into low-lying agricultural basins, creating a reliable water source where none should exist. The water would slowly seep into the ground over several months. By winter, the surface water evaporated, leaving behind soil so nutrient-dense and moisture-rich that the villagers could grow crops directly in the desert sand. This system made the Paliwal Brahmins incredibly wealthy as traders and farmers. A community with this level of technological sophistication didn't leave because of a curse. They left because their vital resource management system was systematically dismantled. The first blow was environmental. When the Cock River was dammed upstream, the natural groundwater recharge failed. By 1815, historical records show that the village wells, the lifeblood of their desert empire, had almost completely dried up. Without water, their signature double crop farming became impossible. As their agricultural wealth vanished, the security forces they funded to protect trade routes disappeared, leaving the village vulnerable to external threats. Diwan Salim Singh exploited this vulnerability. Even as the village crops failed, he extorted the residents with increasingly oppressive taxes, while desert bandits began raiding the town and taking hostages for ransom. We know this wasn't an overnight disappearance because of the 1829 records of British officer James Todd. He documented the Paliwal Brahmins living in voluntary exile to protect their remaining wealth from Salim Singh's control. This population data confirms a slow, agonizing decline, rather than a sudden vanishing. By 1815, half the village had already left. The exodus continued for decades, with a small group of 37 people still holding on as late as 1890. Kuldhara's death was driven by a combination of water scarcity, economic strangulation, and political corruption. It was a gradual migration toward a better life, not a supernatural event. If the village was slowly abandoned due to drought and taxes, why do stories of ghosts and phantom handprints persist so strongly? Part of the answer is pareidolia. When we enter a space expecting the paranormal, our brain finds patterns in random sensory data, turning a shadow into a human figure. However, the modern survival of these legends has been helped along by a more practical motive. For decades, stories of a deadly curse served as an effective deterrent, keeping the public away from the ruins at night. This isolation provided perfect cover for treasure hunters and grave robbers. Because the Paliwal Brahmins were known as wealthy bankers, many believed they buried gold and silver beneath their floors. By circulating stories of hauntings, thieves could excavate the site without the risk of being interrupted by locals. This activity came to light in 1998, when a local watchman discovered two treasure hunters using metal detectors deep within the ruins. They were arrested with a cache of ancient silver coins they had successfully looted from the abandoned homes. The true tragedy of Kuldhara is that a brilliant, technologically advanced civilization was driven out by a water crisis and corrupt leadership, only to have their history reduced to a ghost story by those looking to profit from their remains.